public comment, right?
Progress. Hang on.
Okay, welcome. May 11th, Spokane Regional Law and Justice Council meeting. Ozzy's out of the country, so I'm taking the helm today as the chair, vice chair. So you start off with introductions. So we'll just start this way.
Colin Charbonneau, Director of the Spokane County Public Defender's Office.
Laura Patton, Spokane Valley City Council.
Julie McKay, Superior Court.
Cheryl Toxtred, Office of Pretrial Services.
Tim Fitzgerald, County Clerk. Justin Bingham, Spokane City Prosecutor.
Karen Westberg, I'm the Executive Assistant to the Law and Justice Administrator.
Deanna Kroll, I'm the Commissioner in Airway Heights.
John Haley, I'm a community representative.
Now up on Zoom. Tori, you want to start?
Tori Peterson, Juvenile Court.
Katie McNulty, Deputy Prosecutor for Spokane County.
Damon Simmons, Chief of Police, City of Liberty Lake.
Randy, are you there? Okay. And then also Diane Lindquist, which is works on the statistics for the office, is also on there too as well. So having said that, let's start off with an approval of the minutes. Has everybody received a copy of the minutes?
You want me to put them up for a minute?
Does everybody have a copy? If you have a hard copy, what? Do I have someone who wants to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve the minutes.
In a second,
Second.
been approved, and I have a second, moved by Justin, seconded by John. And I kind of looked through here, you know, if you kind of just go back and look at some of the highlights, one of them was the obviously supported release program, which I'm going to talk about today. We had talked about the at-large positions, which we'll also kind of talk about today. We'll try to throw up some language for that on the screen today as well. And the bylaws, the bylaw work group met again. We've gone through the bylaws. We have some proposed changes that we put in. You should all have a copy of the bylaws. You may not get a copy of the bylaws. Okay. Super. Okay, so we'll start off first. Karen, can you bring up the description for the at-large? And it's for a victim's advocate. If you remember, Ozzy had left off, said, well, what is a victim's advocate and what does that look like? And what are we looking for as far as that? Of course, that is a position to have to go through the application process. I think at the time we talked about the selection team being, if I could find it on here, Tim Fitzgerald, John Haley, Justin Bingham, and myself would be on that selection team. Then from there, obviously, we'd have to go up to the board for board approval. So did anybody have a chance to try to look this over, this description? Do you have any comments or suggestions?
Is that this?
Is that what it turned out like on your screen?
It's just a web.
Oh, I don't know. Did not get that. Oh, I can't see that.
Then
I
a
think-
couple of things. See if I
Can you kind of bloom that up maybe a little bit?
This is just something I found on the website just for a victim's advocate position. And so I don't know how much, you know, how close it would be to what we're looking for, but at least add some idea of what a victim's advocate does. So what we need to
Justin,
do.
did you sit on the last one?
Well, I think that the decision we need to look at, I guess, when we are looking at the applications is, you know, what do the people that are applying, what skills do they possess and what are we looking for? I guess we as a group need to decide what are the skills we're looking for, and then that will help hopefully guide the applicants and who, you know, so I think people have different opinions as to what a victim's slot really means, because a lot of times, you know, from my standpoint, at least as a prosecutor, I think of the advocacy that happens, say, in our DV, in the felony side, they have the victim advocate. They're working with victims of crime. But there are other people that believe that victim individuals can also be persons that are involved because they've also been on both sides of the aisle. So I guess it just depends on how we define it and what we're looking for. And we'll see who applies. I don't know.
Do you think that maybe, since we're, I mean, what we need is basically what Ozzy said and what you're saying too, Justin, is what is it? What are we actually looking for as a committee for the victim's advocate? Is it someone that has been a victim in the past, you know, like you're saying, or is it a person that, you know, like you're saying, like, what was her name? Huter, I believe.
Aaron.
Yeah, what we
Yeah.
did, Mike, last time was we went to those organizations, like WCA, Northwest Justice and Lutheran Community. That's what we were looking for. We were looking for a victim advocate. So we're looking for an advocate, not necessarily a victim.
Right, okay. And so do we craft up something from some kind of an announcement form, or how did you handle it last time?
Gosh,
Well, so last time we just had them interview. We put it out there and said, we're looking for a victim advocate. As Justin just said, they applied and that's what we went with. We
Okay.
didn't have a definition or anything like that. We're looking for there's an open community seat. And we were looking at somebody who was in a victim advocate program of some sort.
I think we've established a focus on victim advocacy is the sort of the key demographic. I'm trying to remember how the actual wording was in the resolution for that slot here, and maybe it's in the bylaws. How we define it, because I think that really is important on how we post it, so that the people know what we're looking for.
Do you have a copy of the resolution?
It just says, it says 3 at-large members of the community, 1 being a victim advocate.
Right, that's as descriptive as it is.
So I guess that's what we advertise.
That's what I saw too, so on that. So, but I like your idea, maybe we just kind of put together some kind of announcement and target those areas that specialize in it and see if we can draw the interest that way.
Do
I'm
we have
open for
the,
suggestions?
so do we have the historical post that we used years ago?
I couldn't find it, but I can do a little bit more research, but I don't think that anything I could find, like the applications, they didn't say anything. They were just generic applications. So I don't know.
Okay, well, go ahead, John.
Well, in the past, we've had great response for people who want to become a community representative in any position. I think last time I was involved, we had like 11 qualified, more than that, but 11 people we were looking at as a group. So I think like you were saying, Justin, just wait and see who applies. And I would think a person who is a victim or has been a victim and applies would also be an advocate somehow involved in the community. So
Yeah, I think it really just depends on what they have done and what skills they bring to the table. I don't know that we can just say, no, we're not going to accept you unless you work for an agency. I think it's a little more broad than that, but you're going to have to look at them. You know, it's sort of like when you're hiring for a position, it's based upon the pool that you got. The quality of the candidate really is when you're looking at the pool. I guess if we're dissatisfied with the pool, we could always repost and be more specific.
right.
But I think John's right. Historically, we've had a lot of people that have applied for these.
I think out of the 11 out of the groups that I work with, there was 4 that were came right to the top, and then it's up to the commissioners at that point to make their choice.
And John, was this the second round though? We didn't have a victim advocate on the first group of at-large. It was the second round of selection for an at-large community member that we got the victim advocate.
Okay.
That we narrowed it down to a victim advocate. That was what I should say.
I think that's 2016, 2017.
That was the second time around we picked them.
We felt like we had a missing voice at the
Yes.
table.
Laura?
Well, I was thinking that it might help if the application itself was less generic and actually talked about victim advocate or had it in the title, or, you know, asked for their activities as related to a victim advocate. And maybe that would, you know, help them sort of narrow in.
That's a good idea. Maybe we need to modify the form to be more specific to what we're looking for in this particular instance.
Anybody want to tackle that?
Well, the question that I would have and the concern that I would have is if you narrow this application too tightly, then we are taking it outside of our equity lens, and it will have somebody who wouldn't necessarily apply because they don't have the requisite education, the requisite
Well,
experience with an agency. If that's what we want, then we need to put what we want an agency.
yeah,
We are looking across and broad.
yeah, I was thinking very general, it's a application for a victim's advocate. And then, what do you feel, why do you feel you'd be a valuable member of the Spokane Regional Law Justice Council? Please list specific experience, especially as related to, being a victim's advocate. I'm just general like that, not specific education requirements or anything like that.
The application does have education requirements, and I was just gonna point that out to where you might have somebody that wouldn't apply because they don't have
Yeah,
a college diploma
Yeah, and I was wondering if we needed to
or HED.
keep those in or not.
yeah, and it sounds like we need to revamp of the app, plus we need to create a new posting minus being able to find the old posting. So if somebody be any volunteers to take us on, Tim? What, did that come out loud? I'm
No,
sorry.
yeah, I didn't hear that. No. Repeat that again?
But really, somebody needs to take the ball, kind of modify it, work with Karen on what the structure of it's gonna be. Preferably, somebody that's,
Yeah,
I think
I'd be
the
happy to do
suggestions
it.
that
Laura, okay?
Sorry, I didn't even. Tell me.
Oh, that
Plain.
I'd help work with you.
Okay, great.
I think the general kind of
Yeah,
naming sounds. Yeah, it sounds like it should fix the problem. I don't know that it's a problem, but
Okay. And we just gotta crop something up for the group to look at. We get looking at, is that what you're thinking?
Mhm.
Okay, perfect.
We need to do this somewhat quickly too, because we need to get the application out.
Okay.
Because I think the sheriff was wanting us to get this thing rolling quickly.
Okay.
So here's some food for thought. Instead of an application, could we just have could we have the applicant submit a resume or a CV? And the reason I say that is in the world of advocacy, a lot of these advocates are specialized. So you have DV advocates, you have advocates that work with human trafficking victims, you have advocates that work with runaways. I mean, it's a huge, it's a plethora of different advocates, out there in the advocacy world. So if we just eliminated the application and asked for a resume or a CV, I think you may be able to eliminate, the applicants that are qualified and also find what we're looking for, especially for someone who has experience in the advocacy world in different areas. I just feel this application is kind of, I don't want to say elementary, but I don't think it'll serve us very well. I think if we just ask for a resume or a CV, it may be better for us.
I think the point though, is that these are pretty generic applications. And then if someone putting forth more information is never a bad thing. But
I mean, you're going to get the same information on a resume or CV, but there's also some additional information that you're going to get as far as experience, education, just the skill set that they have, the skills, the abilities that you're not going to get in an application.
In a generic application, that's what, yeah. Go ahead, Cheryl.
I guess, in my mind, I'm beginning to wonder, are we looking for a community member that might bring forth some, sort of experience in this area? Are we looking for a professional level position? It's almost like we're looking for a victim's advocate to sit,
A community member, yeah,
but
yeah.
yeah, I think if you only say, we want your CV, you're going to end up getting a professional. I would say we need to have a lot of different people to look at. And I would be fine, considering someone, not just a professional, so.
Well, I think if we put that in a job description under what we're looking for, your qualifications, so we list the qualifications, we list the requirements, and if you're interested, apply by submitting your resume and CV. I think there's a way to do that without this application, but my fear is that if we do this by application, we're going to have just what you just said as well. So I think it's kind of a, I don't know, I think we run that risk either way with the application. It's just my opinion that I think we'll get a better response, especially potentially from those who may not think that they qualify because of education. Because if you look at this, someone's going to look and they're going to say certificate, diploma, degree. Well, I don't qualify. So because I don't have a college degree, and everyone who applies for this position is going to have a bachelor's degree or a master's degree. And so I just think if we actually listed exactly what we're looking for as far as qualifications and requirements, and then we request the applicant submit the CV or the resume, I mean, I think it'll work better, but that's just my opinion.
Like a letter of interest, or something to begin with.
Like a cover letter, a letter of interest, and then their CV and their resume. I think it's just more professional as well, especially for our committee, than just this application.
One other thing I just wanted to mention, that is something that these people have to consider, is that it is a voluntary position. And also it says in the bylaws that the at-large members shall provide regular input to the SRLJC and the committees from the community at large, as well as the specific area of interest that they were appointed to represent. And B, they will cooperatively plan and implement a regular community engagement process. That's that's a big ask, you know what I mean? So
yeah,
they need to be aware of that. So we'll make.
Be included, but I agree that the almost like the posting has to be. We just need to look at the posting, how it's put out. Just Cheryl's point too. I mean, we're trying to draw a community member, but the more experience we can draw to our committee, would be better off. You know what I'm saying? So.
I mean, certainly if you were, as the chief had said, a letter of interest as sort of a cover letter, as well as any CV, I just don't want us to limit people that maybe aren't in professional class, and everyone else is like, eh. So it's the same thing. It's just exactly what councilperson said, that we got to be careful about how we put it together. Otherwise, we're going to accidentally, or we're going to take people out that could very well be the best candidates. So if we wanted to make it more open, I think we can get there. But as long as we make sure that we're gleaning the right information, because any of us have ever sat on a selection committee, I mean, that's all you got. We're looking at these pieces of paper and you're having to make some calls on who goes and gets an interview based upon what's in front of you. And if you don't have enough info, you may unfortunately exclude or include someone that isn't probably on the top of the list or shouldn't be there. So.
Okay. So Laura, you're gonna kind of work with this, and then Karen.
Yes.
Okay. Onward and upward. Anything else on that before I move on to the next? Okay, the bylaws. So on the bylaws, you should all have a copy of it. And one of the final pieces to it that the bylaws committee, or I'm sorry, the bylaws work group worked on was Article 7. If everybody could look at Article 7. And this is centered on the public comment period. This wasn't addressed, early on when we did the rewrite. We realized that it's got to be a part of this. We included it in it. And really, I don't need to go verbatim through it, but if you read through that part of it along with the, what you've already reviewed and along with the whole draft, basically. And if you have any comment, we're getting it to you early, so you all have a chance to take a look at it. And then if you have any changes or anything you'd like to see changed in it, if you can get those back to us by the 20th, that will give the bylaws committee work group an opportunity to get back on it, and then give us enough time to give you the 10-day period for review. Ideally, what we'd like to see is an adoption probably June 8th. would be our date that we'd like to move forward with this. So, and this Judge Mauer is not here either, so. Make sure that we get her a copy of it too. And she's, if she doesn't have it already. So that's what we're shooting for, if you want to read through it. Like I said, I didn't want to take up the meeting today reading through it. But the last area that we worked on was the public comment and Article 7.
Tori has her hand up.
So go ahead.
Quick question, was the part about the comment time being at the beginning always there? Have we always had public comment at the beginning of the meeting?
No, Tori, what we did the last time when
Commissioner Frank.
Commissioner French and myself were chair and vice chair, he had moved public comment to the end, and that caused some consternation from a lot of people because they felt as though they were only going to be able to make comment after we had actually had the conversation on the items. And so I think there was a lot of want to move it to the front, but to also at the same time limit it to the point where we would still have an opportunity to get the business of the council done. So in my opinion, this language makes both of those things happen.
Right.
You give comment, you allow it to happen before the business decision, but at the same time, you have a set time in which it occurs. But I know that Tim and I were just chatting about maybe being a little bit more specific as to the sign up process, so it's clearer for the individuals, because it may be if we have a hot topic item, there's only going to be so many things that can be said. There may be some meetings where we have no one that wants to comment. But if we have a big issue, a big item, that we would need to have a clear process so that people don't feel like they were, out of the know and didn't have a way to contact the individual.
That sounds good. Yeah, and Tori, we moved it to the front for the reasons that, that Justin's talking about. Also, because it doesn't really, they can make a comment, but they won't get any feedback from the committee, as you'll see as you read through it. Then also the chair would be the one that records what the questions are and tries to, answer the ones that he can't answer. And then whether there's any other follow-up conversation, that's to be determined. I think what happened last time is, in the ones that were members of the committee, sometimes the public comment period would take an hour in front. It would just go on and on and on and on and on. So in an effort to try to bring some structure to that, we're going to deal with it right up front, as we should, and they should have a voice at the table and ask questions if they want to. Then we'll conduct our business, and then if there's time permitting, we probably will take some questions afterwards. So.
Okay, that would just be my opinion, is that because I think so much of that discussion that happens is then going to lead to comments and questions and allowing them to be part of that discussion. So my first read of this, the feeling I got was, ooh, that's limiting people. That, to me, I'll just say it the way, that's quieting voices. So as long as, my opinion is that we handle this in a way that it does not even appear that we're doing that.
Okay, yeah. Go ahead, John.
One of the things I want to mention is in the bylaws, each council member has an opportunity to bring an expert in on an agenda item to speak to any subject. And so with that being said, that also opens up an opportunity for somebody who sees the agenda item and wants to speak at length on it to contact any of the council members and say, hey, John, I want to talk on this agenda item, and then I have to make a decision. Well, is this person qualified? Is this person going to, add something to the conversation? So that's another form or another way through the bylaws that we can get public comment, because some people are pretty passionate about some of their issues, and so it's kind of a double public comment. I don't know how often it will rise, but it is available.
Are we going to make some sort of, are we going to put something in here about non-typical forms of public comment that you may get, like emails, at least acknowledging those people and that those emails and or letters were given to the chair or vice chair?
Yeah. Yeah, and it does address at the end of it, if you look at the very end of it, about behavior when you're doing it. so that it doesn't get out of control, or if it doesn't get to a point to where it becomes an unproductive conversation of yelling and screaming and those types of things. So, and it's covered pretty well, I would say, and in G about, you know, we're not going to inhibit free speech, but we do want to be respectful and you know, polite, so forth. So.
No, I guess my question is, so if we get a public comment in regards to an issue, are we going to acknowledge those during the public comment?
Oh.
The 15 minutes saying that we received a comment via email from, you know, citizen named such and such and such that was given to the chair or the vice chair.
Yes.
Just to acknowledge that they did make a public comment on an issue.
Yeah, we would. Because I think that's important. If we got an email, we'll just read it right into the beginning of the comment period.
Okay.
Should we add that into this?
Yeah, so I think we should add that into this
Okay.
article, this section.
And, you know, the chief brings up a good point about sort of atypical way that people comment, because one of the things we found during the pandemic when we were meeting via Zoom, where the people would make comments in the Q&A function in Zoom, they would make comments in the chat function in Zoom, and Maggie Yates would try her best to bring those up.
Yeah.
But they're out there, and sometimes, you know, they were actually spot on what we wanted to talk about. So now that we have these hybrid meetings, it's something else we probably want to at least contemplate. I don't know what the answer is and what the best way to deal with them, but I mean, the chief's right. It's not like we all are sitting, you know, on a dais and you've got someone at a lectern. You have different ways of people communicating with us
Right,
now.
yeah, that's a good point. So, yeah, that's, if you could just jot those notes down to us, we'll try to get those points included to you. Like I was saying, if we could get everyone to have them back by the 20th, then we could shoot for June 8th as such an adoption period, or the adoption meeting for it. It gives you guys plenty of time. I wanted to make sure you had enough time to really read it. We're all busy, super busy people, so I want to make sure you guys have plenty of time to go through it. And then also on a side note, let's see this one, John.
Yeah.
And then also on a side note, also asked that on the work group that we go to the racial equity impact assessment as we adopted early on, that this will also go through that. Everything that we work on moving forward, including the supported release program, will all go through this portion of it. So that we're moving forward and we're adhering to what we had beholden ourselves to. So, okay, any more comments on the bylaws? No? Going once, going twice. Okay, the supported release program. At the conclusion of our last meeting, I think in a minute, it even states that Director Sparber will get busy revising the RFP and get the process moving ASAP on the supported release. After that meeting, I conducted one more follow-up meeting with the Board of County Commissioners, because I thought it was important to get all the stakeholders in the room with the county commissioners and make sure that we're all moving forward with it. We all got agreement that this is the way that we want to do it. So included was Amy Bauer, Steve Bartel was there. We had the sheriff there. We had Colin was there. We had the prosecutor's office there, and Amy Bauer. We discussed through all the details. We had everyone talk their concerns and whatever was coming up, and we landed in a good place, I thought, at the end of it. And it's going to be much like, you know, for lack of a better analogy, the original model, which would run through the Law and Justice Office, which would go out for an RFP for a third-party provider that would work through the process as with the, you know, public defenders identifying the folks who could be potentially eligible, working with the prosecutors as well. And then ultimately the district court would be the one that would decide whether or not they would release them on this release or not. So it kind of landed exactly where this kind of made a full circle, but there's some other things that, you know, that I had to do to tweak it and update it. And so I'm making those changes to the RFP right now. I did send the RFP out to all the key stakeholders so they could review it and see if they wanted to make any edits to it. Still waiting on some of those to return. I've got a couple of them. I got Cheryl's back. I got a few of them back already that I'm reviewing and going through. But I'm still waiting on that part of it. And then once it's done, we're gonna kind of come up with one clean version of the RFP. And then I will give the stakeholders an opportunity one more time to look at it, and then I'm gonna put it out and move forward with it. So it'll go through the normal process. It'll go through our office over here at Tony Hall's group will take the process on and do the reviews. How we're gonna review the RFPs, it's undecided yet. What does that look like, and what committee should we put together for the RFP review? And who would want to be involved with that? So if any of you guys want to be involved with the reviewing of the RFP, I'd really appreciate that portion of it too. And then along with it, it was updating the charter. There was a lot to do with the charter. The procedures were changed back and forth. If you remember, it started off one way and then it kind of leaned itself towards becoming pretrial services involved as they would do it. So a lot of the drafts that were in there were like mid-stage between the two of them, and there was a lot of things that I had to go back and alter to make sure that they were all cleaned up. And then ultimately, it's the scope of work, which is it had to be clearly defined in which way we're moving forward. So right now, my task is to get an RFP out for the providers, and that's the process that we're going for right now. So any questions on the supported release? And I know one of the questions that come up, I know that there had been a lot of talk up front, including some from the sheriff and some of the others about their reluctance to do this program and what the program would look like. But having that table conversation and with the board and just talking through some of those things, I think we reached a good place to where we've alleviated a lot of those concerns. Anybody want to be in the RFP committee?
Well, Mike, I think you already got your RFP committee, almost the same committee you had see the board, because you get all the key stakeholders
Yeah,
that know who
that's
or what you're looking for.
good point.
Yeah, I'll jump in there.
We gotta have a community representative, so.
Yep. So John could be a part of it too.
Mike, have you had any more conversations with the foundation as to the timing and the fact that this is going to get really started late in our grant cycle?
Yes. So I reached out to MacArthur and I told him where the process where we're at, and I took them through the whole timeline, so they understood exactly where we're at. And I let them know that it would be something that I would be hoping to roll the money into that we have, existing monies, and that it would probably need to be extended into the next year in order to get the full year pilot. I think it's a 1 year or 2 year pilot.
I can't
I
remember.
think it was a 2 year pilot
It
that got
probably
condensed to a 1 year pilot, but we'll work through those differences, Justin, and we'll try to get those things figured out. We did a lot of contact with Patrick, and there were supports and those lengthy reports you have to produce. We finally finished up that one, and I got that off to him. So there's a lot, that I had to catch up on, plus learn, because a lot of the stuff I wasn't involved with for the MacArthur side of it. So
Yeah, I just emailed him yesterday because we were late on getting that annual report put up and wanted some confirmation on it. And he just said, it's all good. He said, but when you have
the budget part.
the budget part figured out, please give that to us as soon as possible. So,
Well, they've been really good to work with over all these years and understand that each jurisdiction is going through its own internal process. And so I felt like that was where they were going to land, but I'm glad to hear for sure that they're willing to still work with all of us.
Super supportive. And of course, they get all the news too. So they see what's going on in Spokane with it and all this stuff. But it's super nice to have their backing us up and in their guidance too. I mean, they've just given me a lot of help on that side of it, how to put those things together. That's great. Yeah. So it's supposed to go to an hour and a half. Might get done early today. It's the last one. So do we have anyone to open it up for any conversation at the table? Anybody have any things I'd like to bring up or discuss? An SRLJ meeting gets out early. Are you kidding me? That's a wreck. I think it's
35 minutes is really short.
well, I think it's important to remember what I'm just saying because I've been here for a while. So I think it's important to remember what this meeting is for. This meeting is for the heads of the criminal justice departments to talk to one another, to solve problems together, to figure out what's going on so that we're all kind of on the same page. So that's, sometimes we've gotten a little far away from that, but that's what this meeting is for, so that we're all kind of know what each other's doing and we can discuss what kind of programs that we can work on together. So I know Al used to go around the table and say, what's going on with your group? What's going on with
Yeah.
yours? But you know, if that's not necessary,
If
it's
you guys
cool.
feel
But
like we need to do that, I can certainly do that.
I'm not saying that
Yeah.
we should do that. I'm saying that that's kind of,
Or you could get back and eat the rest of your lunch and get ready for what you have to do. So.
Yeah.
So anyway, is there any more questions for the good here? You guys can always email me, pick up the telephone, call me, I'll tell you what's going on. And then anybody on Zoom have any comments they want to bring up?
can you ask Randy Unford's proxy to just give us her name?
Yeah. we should do it. So who is representing the DOC?
I am. My name is Randy Unfred. I'm the field administrator.
No, that's correct. Okay, that's right. Okay. All right. Well, then, at having that, I'll adjourn the meeting at 12:35. You guys have a good day.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I want to introduce myself. I have
That's a record.
stuff.
So it's our next meeting. It's okay to keep each other's line.
I was warned this, you know.
Oh, yeah.
I think we got like a head.